My name is Rachel, and I was always the afterthought. Not the golden child, not the rebel, just invisible. On my 40th birthday, I flew home, hoping for a quiet dinner with my family. What I got was a cancellation, so my younger brother could pitch his startup in New York. They didn't know I arrived on a private jet. They didn't know the woman they called so dependable was the CEO of a national tech company. But when my assistant called during dinner and said boss, the entire illusion shattered. You ever realize your own family never really saw you? The town hadn't changed much, still the same faded welcome sign on the highway, still the same rusted swing set in the park across from the elementary school. Rachel sat behind the wheel of her rented sedan, staring at the intersection where Main Street met the past. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles pale, though the drive had been calm. The closer she got to home, the more her chest tightened. She wasn't nervous about being back. She was nervous about being forgotten. Again. She pulled into the gravel driveway of her childhood home, a pale blue two-story that hadn't seen a paintbrush in over a decade. The porch light flickered even in daylight. She took a breath and stepped out, smoothing her sweater, deliberately casual, deliberately unremarkable. Her suitcase remained in the trunk. She wouldn't need it tonight, just a dinner, a couple of laughs, a slice of cake maybe. Then back to Boston the next day, clean, simple, no drama. The front door creaked open before she could knock. Her mother, Linda, appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Rachel, you made it. Right on time," she said, as if Rachel had come home for a dental checkup, not her 40th birthday. Rachel stepped inside, the scent of lemon cleaning spray and overcooked pasta clinging to the air. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it," she replied, her voice lighter than she felt. They moved into the kitchen, unchanged, cluttered, familiar. Her mother gestured toward the kettle. "Tea?" "Sure." They sat at the old linoleum table. Rachel waited for her mother to say it, "Happy birthday," but instead Linda cleared her throat. "Listen, sweetheart," she began, already defensive. "I wanted to tell you earlier, but with everything going on—" Rachel blinked. "Tell me what?" "We had to cancel the dinner, at Mateo's." Rachel's breath caught. She tried to keep her tone even. "Oh?" Linda kept her gaze on the steam rising from her mug. "Kyle's presenting his pitch to some big investors in New York next week. You know how important that is. Flights, hotel, it adds up." "So the dinner money went to Kyle's trip," Rachel said, not asking. Her mother nodded. "We figured we'd just do something small here. Maybe take out from Tony's? You like their pizza, right?" Rachel smiled, or tried to. The corners of her mouth lifted mechanically. "Yeah, sure. That's fine." A flicker of concern passed across Linda's face, quickly replaced by that familiar, brisk efficiency. "You're always so understanding. I told your father. You wouldn't make a fuss. You've always been the responsible one." Rachel nodded, the smile still pasted on. "Right. Reliable Rachel." Her mother stood. "I'll get your room ready. Kyle should be home soon. He's dying to see you. He's got a whole slideshow of his pitch. Wait till you see it." As Linda disappeared up the stairs, Rachel remained seated, her fingers curled tightly around the warm ceramic of the mug. She stared at the faded yellow wallpaper, the same pattern she'd memorized in high school, back when every birthday meant a forgotten gift, a missed cake, or a last-minute rain check. She was 40 now. A woman who had quietly built an empire in silence, who had given scholarships to underprivileged kids, who had stood on TED stages and signed 7-figure deals. And still, her birthday was too expensive to celebrate. Rachel set the mug down with a soft clink and whispered to the empty kitchen, "Happy birthday to me." The mug still sat untouched on the table, now lukewarm. Rachel watched the steam fade and let her mind drift, as it always did when the silence of this house wrapped around her too tightly. Her body remained still, but inside, memories stirred like storm clouds gathering. She was 10 the first time a birthday was cancelled. It had been a simple plan: cupcakes with sprinkles, a movie night, and her 2 best friends from school. Rachel had spent the week making paper invitations with glitter and glue. She even saved part of her allowance to buy her own decorations, little pink balloons and a flimsy happy birthday banner from the dollar store. But that morning, Kyle came down with a slight fever, 99.6 degrees. He sniffled once, and their mother declared the whole day too much stress for a sick child. The cupcakes were never baked. The banner stayed in its package. Rachel's friends never came. No one rescheduled. It was as if the birthday had never existed. At 16 it happened again, but this time no excuse. She had studied late the night before, preparing for an exam, assuming the family would remember. She came home from school, hopeful, maybe a card, a slice of cake. Instead, the house was dark and quiet. Her mother had taken Kyle to soccer practice. Her father was still at work. On the kitchen counter, a stack of mail sat unopened. Somewhere in that stack was a card from her grandmother. That was it. She ordered herself Chinese takeout and ate alone, trying not to cry over the plastic container of lo mein. College was worse. She'd gotten into Northeastern with partial scholarship, but even with aid, the costs were steep. She worked double shifts at the campus bookstore, graded papers as a TA, and even took on night shifts at a late-night diner just to make rent. Her parents had said they were proud, but the support stopped at words. Kyle, meanwhile, got into a private university across the country. Tuition, housing, even a semester abroad in Berlin, fully funded by their parents. When Rachel asked about it once, her mother said, "Kyle's trying so hard, honey. You're just more independent." Independent. The word had always felt like a quiet dismissal. Not a compliment. More like a reason to give her less. Rachel took a shaky breath. She hadn't thought about those birthdays in years, but now they returned in sharp clarity, each memory a pinprick to her chest. She pressed her fingers into her temples, trying to hold herself together. It wasn't about the party, or the money, or even the pizza they offered as a substitute. It was about the pattern. The years and years of being the fallback plan. The one who didn't need anything. The emotional mule of the family, carrying the weight without ever asking for help. She stood slowly and walked over to the kitchen window. The backyard looked just as it always had. The rusted swing set, the cracked patio, the half-dead rose bushes her mum never quite had time to tend. Rachel had once learned to ride her bike there. Kyle had once broken his arm falling from the slide, and they all remembered that story with laughter and detail. No one remembered Rachel's perfect attendance awards. No one remembered that she once placed 3rd in the regional science fair with a solar-powered water purifier she built from scrap. Her father took a photo, then promptly forgot about it. The realization hit her all at once. I was never the priority. Not once. Not even now. Even on her 40th birthday, she was the backup plan. A lump rose in her throat, thick and stubborn. She swallowed it down and turned away from the window. Her mother's voice echoed upstairs, something about Kyle's flight confirmation and the pitch deck slides he was printing. Her mother's pride was audible in every syllable. Rachel felt invisible. Not because she had no presence, but because her presence was so consistent, so stable, that no one had ever paused to truly see it. She was the ghost in the family portrait, always standing just a bit behind, always smiling, always quiet. But ghosts don't stay silent forever. In a world they never asked to see, Rachel had bled herself into existence. 10 years ago, she had nothing but a laptop with a cracked screen, an idea scribbled in a notebook, and a stubborn refusal to stay invisible. She rented a co-working space above a noisy laundromat in downtown Boston. By day, she coded until her eyes burned. By night, she curled up on the lumpy couch in the break room, hiding her clothes in a filing cabinet and brushing her teeth in the communal bathroom. She remembered counting the coins in her coat pocket to buy instant ramen from the corner store. One night, she fainted from exhaustion and hunger, waking up on the floor next to the coffee machine with a bruised chin and no one to call. She didn't call home. What would she even say? "Hey, Mom, I passed out because I'm too broke to eat. How's Kyle's startup?" No one asked for details anyway. Every Sunday she called home like clockwork. Her mother would answer with distracted warmth. "Hi, sweetie. Still working at that computer place?" "Yes, still there." "That's good. You've always been so good with computers. So, guess what? Kyle's app made it to the semi-finals for that innovation grant." And just like that, the conversation turned. Her father would chime in to ask how the weather in Boston was. They never asked what Rachel actually did, what her days looked like, what she was building. She didn't offer. It hurt less to lie by omission than to spell it out and hear the silence that followed. Jessica was the only one who knew the truth. She'd joined Rachel 5 years ago when things started shifting. Novatech, what began as a scrappy idea to revolutionize AI-driven learning for low-income students, landed its first real contract. A school district on the edge of bankruptcy saw test scores jump 30% after a pilot trial. From there, it snowballed. Investors, partnerships, national recognition. But Rachel still lived modestly for years. Every cent went back into the company. She slept in the office long after she could afford an apartment. Jessica, young but whip-smart, offered to manage the chaos. Rachel hired her on the spot after she restructured a broken launch schedule on a napkin during their first coffee. Now, Jessica ran point on everything: media requests, contracts, Rachel's calendar, even her personal grocery deliveries. She also knew how Rachel deflected phone calls from home, how her voice changed when she said, "Yeah, work's fine, just busy." "You know," Jessica had said once, "they might ask more if they understood how big this is." Rachel shook her head. "They wouldn't know what to ask. To them, I'm still the girl who's good with PowerPoint." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "You own a company that provides AI curriculum to 500,000 students." "Doesn't matter. Kyle's trying to build a drone delivery service for vitamins. That's more exciting at dinner." It became a joke between them, but one with jagged edges. For all her success, Rachel still carried that 10-year-old inside her. The girl whose birthday was cancelled for a feverish sibling, the teenager who celebrated alone, the adult woman who built an empire but never once heard her mother say, "Tell me everything." She kept the truth close, not out of shame, but fatigue. It was tiring to explain ambition to people who only recognized sacrifice when it was loud and visible. Rachel's sacrifices were quiet, internal, the kind no one clapped for. Last Christmas, she'd sent her parents a check under the guise of a company-wide holiday bonus. Her mother called to say, "Thank you," confused. "That's so kind of your company. We didn't know they did that for employee families." Rachel didn't correct her. The lie felt safer than the silence that would have followed the truth. And still, she showed up, still played the role of the responsible one, the one who didn't need applause or even acknowledgement. But this birthday, this time, it ached differently. Not because they forgot, but because they remembered just enough to take it away. It had been a surreal moment, standing on the main stage at the National Education Tech Conference, holding a crystal-clear award engraved with her name, Rachel Emery Innovator of the Year, while hundreds of educators and industry leaders rose to their feet in a standing ovation. She remembered blinking under the stage lights, trying to process that it was real. That the years of sleeping in offices, eating vending machine dinners, and missing every normal milestone hadn't been for nothing. That was the same week her Forbes interview went live. A full-page profile. Her photo, blazer sharp, expression confident, beneath a headline that read, "The woman who's changing the way America's children learn." The article praised her vision, her resilience, her leadership. It mentioned how Novatech's AI model had reduced dropout rates in several underserved school districts by over 25%. Jessica had printed out 5 glossy copies, joking, "Frame 1, burn 1. Send 3 to people who doubted you." Rachel didn't send them to anyone, not even her parents, but she did send them a gift. It was December. She ordered a custom winter vacation package for them, round-trip flights to a cozy resort in Vermont, complete with spa days, gourmet meals, and snowshoeing tours. She added a handwritten note, "For all the winters you spent putting us first, love, Rachel." A week later, her mother called. "We just got your card and that big envelope thing. What a surprise." Rachel smiled through the phone. "I'm glad you liked it." There was a pause. "And such a generous gift. Didn't know they paid that well in IT. You must have a really nice boss." Rachel froze for half a beat. "Yeah, something like that." Her mother chuckled. "You always were our tech girl. Knew your way around a mouse before you could ride a bike." That night, Rachel stared at the unopened Forbes magazine sitting on her nightstand. Not because she didn't want to see it again, but because she couldn't decide which hurt more, their ignorance or their indifference. She'd almost told them then, had picked up the phone, ready to say, "Mom, Dad, I run that company. I'm the CEO. They gave me that award." But Kyle had just posted about his new app update on Instagram. Their mother called to gush, "Did you see what your brother's building? It's going to change wellness for everyone. You two are both so tech-savvy." Rachel had swallowed her pride and changed the subject. It wasn't the first time. She remembered the morning of her first $1 million contract. Jessica had surprised her with champagne and a breakfast spread in the office kitchen. "You did it," she said, eyes gleaming. "You're officially a tech mogul." Rachel had laughed, genuinely happy. Then she called home. Her father answered, "Hey, kiddo, everything okay?" "I've got some good news." Before she could say more, her dad interrupted. "Hold that thought. Kyle's on the other line. His patent got approved today. Isn't that something?" She congratulated Kyle through gritted teeth and hung up before saying another word. Over time, she learned. She stopped trying to insert herself into a space where there was no room for her narrative. Her success lived in one universe, and her family lived in another. One where Rachel was dependable, quiet, smart with computers, and safely unremarkable. Jessica had noticed, of course. "You're the only person I know who made the Forbes list and didn't post it," she teased. Rachel had shrugged. "What's the point?" Jessica tilted her head. "You act like this is some secret identity, like you're Batman. More like a ghost in a power suit." It was a joke, sort of. Rachel never lied. She just withheld, selectively, strategically. But lately that strategy had begun to feel like a prison. And sitting in her childhood kitchen again, watching her mother make a grocery list for Kyle's protein shakes while forgetting Rachel's birthday entirely, it cracked something open. She wasn't ashamed of her success. She was just tired of burying it. And this time, she wasn't sure she could keep pretending. The dining room hadn't changed since Rachel last saw it. Same cherry wood table, same creaky chairs, same dim overhead light that flickered once when turned on. Her mother had placed mismatched placemats and a store-bought lasagna steamed weekly in its foil tray. A small bowl of salad sat in the centre, untouched. No candles, no cake, no happy birthday banner. Rachel sat at her old seat, facing the wall where Kyle's framed achievements hung proudly. High school science fair ribbon, college graduation photo, a blurry newspaper clipping from a local tech blog that once featured his early startup. Her name wasn't anywhere on that wall. Kyle sat across from her, his laptop perched beside his plate. He was already deep into a monologue about his latest venture, gesturing with a fork in one hand and scrolling slides with the other. I mean, the scalability potential alone is insane, he said between bites. We're talking about disrupting the entire wellness logistics pipeline with autonomous delivery drones. Investors are drooling. Their mother beamed. It's genius, sweetheart. You've always had such vision. I told Linda from church, you're the future of this family. Rachel looked down at her plate. Her lasagna slice had gone cold. Her father gave a quiet nod. Sounds promising, son. Kyle launched into the next slide. Market analysis, burn rate, user acquisition plans. Rachel chewed silently. Each word he spoke another reminder of where the family's spotlight lived. No one asked her a single question. No one said, "How's Boston?" No one said, "Happy birthday." They didn't forget. They just replaced it. Her mother turned to Kyle. "Did you double-check your hotel booking for New York?" "Yeah, Jessica helped with that," Kyle said casually. The name struck Rachel like a pinprick. Jessica. The irony made her bite back a laugh. "Anyway," Kyle continued, "my pitch is Monday morning, then dinner with 2 VC firms. Rachel, you'll love this. They're from San Francisco. Probably your people." Rachel nodded, forcing a smile. "Probably." She didn't bother correcting him. One of those VC firms had once offered her 8 figures to acquire Novatech. She'd declined. As Kyle continued, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen. It was Jessica. The contact name read, "Office Do Not Ignore." She hesitated. Her mother waved dismissively. "Go ahead, honey. If work's calling, we understand. Just your little computer job, right?" Rachel locked eyes with her for a moment, something sharp twisting in her chest. Then, slowly, she pressed answer and placed the phone on speaker. "Jessica, you're on speaker," she said calmly. Jessica's voice came through, crisp and professional. "Hi, boss. Sorry to interrupt. I know you're with family, but the French Education Ministry just confirmed the meeting for Tuesday in Paris. They're requesting you present the National Implementation Roadmap in person. The board already approved the charter flight, scheduled for 7:30 a.m. Shall I arrange your usual suite at Le Maurice or the Peninsula?" Silence. It dropped over the room like a stone in still water. Her mother's hand froze mid-air with her fork. Her father stared at Rachel, stunned. Kyle blinked, clearly unsure if this was some kind of elaborate joke. Rachel picked up the phone. "Thank you, Jessica. I'll review the briefing packet tonight. Let's confirm arrangements tomorrow morning." "Understood. And happy birthday, boss. The team misses you." "Thanks," Rachel replied, then hung up. The silence lingered, longer than it should have. Her father finally broke it. "Paris?" Rachel leaned back in her chair, setting her napkin beside her plate. "Yes," she said evenly. "Business trip. Short notice." Her mother looked like she was trying to form words but couldn't find the right ones. Her lips parted, then closed again. Kyle let out a short, awkward laugh. "Wait, you're flying to Paris? On a jet?" Rachel nodded once. "That's right." The air in the room felt thinner now, like someone had turned down the oxygen. Rachel sat perfectly still, her hands resting gently on her lap. Her mother's wine glass trembled slightly on the table, and her father had shifted his weight forward, arms on the table, as if trying to process a foreign language. Even Kyle, who always had something to say, remained oddly quiet, his mouth slightly ajar, eyes flicking between Rachel and her phone like he was waiting for the punchline. "Boss," her mother repeated at last, her voice barely above a whisper. "She called you, boss?" Rachel offered a polite nod. "That's what I am." Kyle let out a low breath, almost a scoff. "And Paris? A meeting with the French ministry?" "Yes." Rachel's tone was flat, controlled. "Education department." Her father leaned back, frowning as though trying to assemble puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit. "Wait, What is it exactly you do again? Rachel met his eyes, unwavering. I run an educational technology firm. I'm the founder and CEO. Her mother blinked rapidly. But you always just said you worked in tech, something with computers. I do, Rachel replied, and I run the company that builds the systems. The room fell into another uneasy silence. It wasn't just disbelief, it was disorientation. For them, she had always existed in the background, a constant presence too familiar to be interesting. Kyle was the disruptor, the dreamer. Rachel was the stable one, the support system, the silent sibling who needed nothing. Now, the script was torn in half. Rachel stood up slowly, collecting her plate. "Excuse me," she said calmly, heading toward the kitchen without looking back. Behind her, she heard Kyle mutter, how was I supposed to know? When she returned, no one had moved. Her father stared at the table. Her mother looked older somehow, as if the revelation had added years in minutes. They finished dinner in silence. Kyle eventually excused himself with a mumble about needing to tweak his pitch deck. Their father drifted into the living room, switching on the news more out of habit than interest. Rachel lingered behind, stacking dishes, rinsing them with slow, deliberate movements. Her mother hovered nearby, silent at first, then finally spoke as Rachel dried her hands. "Rachel," she said, voice thin, you're a director." Rachel turned to face her, brows slightly lifted. "A CEO," she corrected softly. "I built the company from scratch." Linda's mouth opened, then closed. She looked genuinely shaken, like she'd just been told her daughter had been living under an alias. "All these years," she said, more to herself than to Rachel. "You never said." Rachel folded the dish towel and placed it on the counter. "You never asked." Her mother flinched slightly at the words. "I didn't mean to ignore." Rachel shrugged. "It's not just about asking, it's about listening. You always assumed Kyle's world was the more interesting one." Linda stepped closer. "I didn't know you were doing something so important." Rachel gave a small, sad smile. "I know." They stood there a moment, neither knowing what to say next. Then Linda reached out, touching Rachel's arm lightly. "I'm sorry we cancelled the dinner," she said. "I didn't know this meant so much." "It's not about the dinner," Rachel replied. "It's about a lifetime of being forgotten. Tonight was just the latest example." Her mother's hand dropped back to her side. "We didn't forget. We thought you'd understand. You always do." Rachel nodded, then added, "That's the problem." She left the kitchen, her footsteps soft on the old floorboards. As she passed the family photos in the hallway, she paused. There was Kyle at his high school graduation, Kyle at the science fair, Kyle holding a soccer trophy. Rachel only appeared once, in the corner of a Christmas photo, half turned away, mid-blink. She didn't feel angry, just hollow. And for the first time, she didn't want to stay the night. The next morning, Rachel awoke early. Sleep had been shallow and restless. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside her window seemed louder than usual. She dressed slowly, tugging on a plain grey sweater and dark jeans, deliberately unremarkable. She didn't want to look successful. She wanted to look like herself, whoever that even was in this place. Downstairs, the house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like a waiting room before a difficult conversation. Kyle was already at the dining table, laptop open, fingers dancing over the keyboard. Their father sat beside him, sipping coffee, watching as if trying to understand something just out of reach. Linda stood by the stove, stirring oatmeal with exaggerated focus. Rachel walked in, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat. No one said good morning. No one said anything. It was Kyle who finally broke the silence. He didn't look up. "So, you're some big tech exec now." Rachel didn't flinch. "I run an educational technology company, yes." He scoffed. "Must be nice. Flying around in jets, taking meetings in Paris? Why keep it secret? Planning a big reveal? Rachel stared at him. No, I wasn't hiding it. I just stopped trying to share things no one cared to hear. Kyle's fingers froze over the keyboard. That's not fair. Isn't it? Rachel asked, voice steady. You've dominated every family conversation for the past 15 years. I couldn't get a full sentence in without being interrupted by your next pitch or app or failed prototype. Linda turned from the stove. Rachel. No, Mom, Rachel said, raising a hand gently. Let's be honest. When I got into Northeastern, no one asked how I'd pay for it. When Kyle wanted to study abroad, you pulled from your retirement savings. Kyle stood now, voice rising. Why bring all this up now? You want us to feel guilty because you didn't speak up? Rachel stood too. I didn't speak up because I was taught to be small, to not rock the boat, to understand. But I'm done playing that role. Their father put down his mug. Let's all calm down. No, Kyle snapped. She shows up, drops this bombshell about being some hotshot CEO, and now what? Wants a standing ovation? Rachel turned to him, expression unreadable. You think this is about applause? Then what? He snapped. Why even say anything if not to show off? We were fine before. Rachel's voice dropped, low and clear. Were you? He blinked. Were we fine? She repeated. When I sat through birthday after birthday being forgotten? Were we fine when every call home turned into another monologue about your success? Were we fine when no one even asked if I was okay? Kyle's mouth opened, then closed again. Rachel took a step forward. Let me ask you something, Kyle. Do you even remember what today is? He frowned. It's Saturday? She nodded. Yes, and it's also my birthday. The room went silent. Her mother paled. Her father looked down at the table. Kyle's face shifted, confusion replaced by dawning realization, and something else, shame. Rachel let the silence settle, heavy as a stone. I didn't expect a party, she said finally, but I didn't expect to be erased either. She turned, left her coffee untouched, and walked out the front door into the crisp morning air. Behind her, no one called her back. The hotel room wasn't luxurious, certainly not by Rachel's standards, but it was quiet. And most importantly, it was hers. She tossed her overnight bag on the neatly made bed and stood for a moment, letting the silence wash over her. The tension in her shoulders began to release, inch by inch. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding since the moment Jessica's voice echoed through the family dining room. She had promised herself this trip would be different, not because she needed their praise, but because somewhere deep down she'd hoped maybe, just maybe, they'd see her, without the fanfare, without the resume, just Rachel, the daughter, the sister. Clearly she had hoped for too much. Earlier that afternoon, she'd stood at the edge of their gravel driveway while the morning sun broke through the clouds. Kyle hadn't followed, neither had their parents. The silence after her revelation, after asking Kyle if he remembered her birthday, wasn't just awkward. It was devastating, not because they didn't know, but because they didn't think it mattered. She sat now on the edge of the bed, pulled out her phone, and stared at a blank text message screen. Jessica's name hovered at the top, ready to type. But instead, Rachel swiped to the family group chat. It had been mostly dormant lately, punctuated by Kyle's travel updates and their mother's forwarded memes. No one had messaged all day. Rachel's fingers moved before she could stop them. I didn't hide who I am to make anyone uncomfortable. I did it because I was waiting for someone to ask. She paused, then added, I wanted to be seen without having to shout, without having to earn my place at this table by being loud or needy. I wanted you to want to know me, not the resume version, just me. She hit send. 5 minutes later, her phone rang. It wasn't Kyle, it wasn't her mother, it was her father. Rachel stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Hi. There was a long pause. Then, "Where are you?" She let the silence hang. "I'm safe," she finally said. "At the Oakwood Inn." Another pause. "You didn't need to leave." Rachel laughed softly, no humour in it. "Didn't I?" Daniel sighed. I didn't know. About your company, about the scale of it." "That's kind of the point, Dad." "I know," he admitted. "That's why I'm calling, not to ask where you are, but to say I'm listening now." She didn't reply. He added quietly, "Your mother's crying." Rachel sat up straighter. "Is she angry?" "No," he said. "Worse. She feels guilty." Rachel closed her eyes. That was almost harder to hear. "She keeps saying, 'How could I not see it?'" Rachel swallowed hard. "Because you weren't looking." There was silence again, longer this time. Then her father said, "I'll be honest, Rachel. I always thought you were the one we didn't need to worry about." "That's what you told yourself," she said. "And maybe I let you believe it. But it wasn't true." "I'm sorry." She exhaled. It wasn't enough, but it was something. "Dad," she said, her voice softer now, "do you know why I never told you about Novatech? About Forbes? The awards? The Paris meetings?" "No." "Because I wanted you to notice on your own. I thought if you were ever curious, if you ever Googled my name, you'd find me. You'd be proud without me having to hand it to you like a presentation." Daniel didn't respond immediately. But when he did, his voice was heavier. "I failed you." Rachel felt a sharp pang, deep and sudden. She didn't want pity. She wanted presence, but maybe this was the start. "You were just following the pattern," she said. "We all were." Another silence. Then, tentatively, he asked, "Will you come home? Tonight?" Rachel shook her head, even though he couldn't see. "Not tonight. I need a little space." He didn't protest. "Fair enough." She was about to hang up when he said, "I am proud of you, not because of the company, because you had the strength to tell us the truth, even when we didn't deserve it." Rachel felt her throat tighten. "Thanks, Dad." They ended the call. She sat there a while, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. Not fully. Not completely. But it was a start. And for now, that was enough. Rachel didn't expect the knock. It came at 8:03 a.m., just as she finished her first cup of coffee and was about to dive into unread emails. The knock wasn't tentative. It was steady, familiar. A rhythm she hadn't heard in years, but instantly recognized. She opened the door slowly. Daniel stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, a paper bag in one hand, and a tentative look on his face. His shoulders were slightly hunched, like he was bracing for rejection. "I brought breakfast," he said. Rachel blinked. "You found me?" He gave a small shrug. "Margie, at the front desk, used to babysit you. She still remembers your favourite cereal." Rachel stepped aside. "Come in." He entered quietly, moving to the window before turning around. She gestured to the table near the kitchenette, and they both sat, silence filling the space before either of them dared to break it. Daniel pulled out 2 paper-wrapped breakfast sandwiches and placed them on the table. "I didn't know what you'd want, so I got bacon and egg. You used to love those." Rachel nodded, unwrapping the sandwich but not eating. He exhaled slowly. "I was up all night." "I figured," she said gently. "I kept replaying everything, what you said, what we missed, and it hit me, how little I actually know about your life." Rachel swallowed hard. Daniel looked up at her, eyes more tired than usual. "I want to say this clearly, without conditions. I'm proud of you." She froze. "I mean it," he continued, "not because of Paris, or jets, or companies. I'm proud of you because you did all that without anyone clearing the path." Rachel's eyes welled. She hadn't expected to cry, not in front of him. "I had no idea how much we'd missed," he said, voice low. "And I'm sorry I didn't notice earlier. I thought you didn't need me." She looked at him, tears threatening to fall. I needed you to care. That's different. He nodded slowly. I know that now. Rachel looked down at her hands, gripping the warm sandwich. Do you know why I became so good at what I do? Why? Because I had no fallback, no one behind me. Every failure was mine to fix. Every step forward I earned alone. He said nothing, letting her speak. I didn't have a safety net, Dad. I was the net, for everyone else. A tear slipped down her cheek and she wiped it quickly. You were always busy with Kyle, and Mom. She just assumed I'd be fine. Daniel leaned forward. That wasn't fair. No, she agreed. But it's what happened. Another pause. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. You know, I always thought you reminded me of my dad. Quiet, precise, driven. He never needed much from me either, or so I thought. Rachel looked up. Did you ever tell him you were proud? He hesitated. No, and I regret it every day. Their eyes met. I don't want that with you, he said. I don't want to leave anything unsaid. Rachel let the silence stretch, heavy with everything neither of them had said for years. Then softly, Thank you. Daniel nodded, then smiled faintly. You built something incredible, Rachel. Not just a company, but a whole new way for kids to learn. You changed lives, and we missed it. Rachel reached for her coffee. Her voice was steadier now. You still have time to see it. He gave a small chuckle. I'd like that. And just like that, something shifted. Not fully healed, but cracked open, letting light in. They sat in silence for a few minutes, the breakfast sandwiches half eaten, steam rising slowly from the untouched coffee mugs. Outside the window, the town stirred gently to life. Dog walkers, passing cars, the distant sound of a train. But inside that small hotel room, time seemed to hold its breath. Rachel was the first to speak again. I used to think Mom just forgot things, that she was overwhelmed, distracted, human. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, his gaze falling to the floor. I thought so too. She tilted her head, but last night it felt different, like it wasn't just forgetfulness. Daniel didn't answer right away. His mouth tightened. He stared down at his hands, then finally spoke, slowly, carefully, as if unspooling a truth he'd carried for too long. There's something I need to tell you, he said. Something I probably should have said years ago. Rachel straightened in her seat. Okay. When you got into Northeastern, I was ready to co-sign the student loan. I even looked into pulling some money from my pension. It wasn't a lot, but it would have helped. She blinked. You never told me that. I didn't get the chance, he said. Your mom, she didn't think it was necessary. Rachel froze. What do you mean? Daniel exhaled slowly. She said Kyle needed the support more, that you'd figure it out, that you always did. Rachel felt the breath leave her lungs. He continued, She told me, Rachel's responsible. She doesn't need us the way Kyle does. Rachel stared at him, her chest rising and falling slowly. You agreed with her, she said, not as a question, just a fact. Daniel nodded. I didn't want to. But I let it go. I thought, maybe she was right. You'd already picked up extra work-study jobs. You never complained. I thought, maybe you didn't expect help. Rachel leaned back, eyes glassy, her lips pressed together tightly. A dull ache bloomed in her stomach, not sharp like betrayal, but heavy like confirmation. It wasn't just neglect. It was a decision, a deliberate choice to back one child over the other. All those years of wondering, was I just easy to forget, had a new, bitter answer. No, she hadn't been forgotten. She'd been deemed expendable. She swallowed. So it wasn't that she forgot my birthday, or my science fair, or that I didn't get a graduation dinner. It's that she thought I didn't need those things. Daniel looked pained. I think she thought she was protecting the weaker one. She was wrong. He nodded. I know that now. Rachel stood and walked to the window, arms folded tight across her chest. "You should have told me. Back then." "I know," he said again, quietly. "I failed you both ways, by not fighting harder and by staying silent." She didn't turn around. Instead, she said, "Do you know what it feels like to be the fallback plan? The one who always gets the leftovers, not because there's nothing left, but because someone else already got the best parts, by design." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. Rachel finally turned to face him. "I spent years trying to earn something I didn't realize had already been decided. That's what hurts the most." He stood slowly, shoulders heavy. "You're right, and I can't take back the decisions we made, but I can be here now if you'll let me." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time she didn't see the man who fixed her bike or taught her to drive. She saw a man who had followed, not led, who had chosen the easier silence over the harder truth. But at least now he was speaking. She gave a small nod, one step at a time. Daniel smiled faintly. "That's fair." And just like that, another crack in the foundation of her past became a space wide enough for clarity to begin. The house smelled like lemons, not the artificial kind from a bottle of cleaner, but the real thing, warm, buttery, and just a little tart. Rachel paused at the doorway, inhaling deeply. The scent pulled something tender and unexpected from her chest. Her mother was baking. She hadn't baked in years, not since Kyle's high school graduation party, when she made 3 kinds of cupcakes because you never know what people will want. But this wasn't for a party. This was quiet, thoughtful, intentional. Rachel stepped inside, her overnight bag still in hand. Her mother looked up from the oven, cheeks flushed from the heat. "I wasn't sure if you'd come." Rachel set the bag down slowly. "Dad said you wanted to talk." Linda wiped her hands on her apron. "I did. I do." The kitchen table had been reset. No laptops, no scattered bills or Kyle's discarded energy bar wrappers. Just placemats, folded napkins, and 2 glasses of lemonade already sweating with condensation. "I made lemon cake," Linda said, almost nervously. "You used to love it." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You remembered." A faint smile touched her mother's lips. "I've been trying to." They sat, and Rachel took a small bite of the cake. It was imperfect, the glaze too thin, the edges slightly crisp, but it was good. More than that, it was hers. They ate in silence for a while, not uncomfortable, but cautious. Finally, Linda cleared her throat. "Your father told me what you said, about how you felt all these years." Rachel set her fork down. "And?" Linda didn't flinch. "I deserved it, every word." Rachel said nothing. "I think I let myself believe you were fine because that made it easier not to worry," her mother continued. "But that was selfish and lazy." Another pause. "I'm sorry," she added. "Truly." Rachel looked at her. "Why now?" Linda exhaled. "Because for the first time I realized what I was missing. Not just what you were achieving, but who you are." She reached for her glass, then stopped. "And I want to fix it, if you'll let me." Rachel watched her for a long moment. Then, "What does fixing it look like?" Her mother gave a soft, shaky laugh. "I don't know. Listening more, interrupting less, asking about your life instead of assuming I already know it." Rachel blinked. That alone felt like a seismic shift. Linda hesitated. Would you tell me about your company?" Rachel tilted her head. "You really want to know?" "I do," her mother said. "I want to understand, not the headlines or the press releases, just how it works, what it means to you." For a second, Rachel felt herself slip into old reflexes, the urge to say, "It's boring," or "It's complicated," just to keep things simple. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned forward. "It started with one idea. I wanted to build something that would give kids the kind of personalized attention I never got." Linda's eyes softened, but she didn't interrupt. Rachel continued. So we created AI software that adapts to each student's learning style. It's used in over 500 schools now, some of them in districts where kids don't even have stable Wi-Fi. Her mother's mouth parted slightly. That's amazing, Rachel nodded. It is. And for the first time, it felt good to say it out loud, to claim it fully, not for recognition, but for connection. The knock on Rachel's bedroom door came later that evening, soft but insistent. She opened it to find Kyle standing there, hands buried in his hoodie pockets, looking like the little boy he used to be, the one who broke her favourite pencil and cried when she didn't get mad. Can we talk? He asked, eyes not quite meeting hers. Rachel hesitated for a second, then stepped aside. He walked in slowly, glancing around the room, the same one they'd both grown up in, though Rachel hadn't slept here in over a decade. The walls were still lined with pastel wallpaper. Her bookshelf was still half full, holding dusty high school novels and a ceramic owl she painted at summer camp. Kyle sat on the edge of the bed, fidgeting with the drawstring of his hoodie. "I owe you an apology," he said. Rachel crossed her arms. "You mean for ignoring my birthday? Or minimizing my entire career?" His face flushed. "Yeah, that too, but there's something else." Something in his voice made her pause. There was a tremor there, an unspoken weight. Kyle looked up. "Do you remember your sophomore year of college? When you applied for that internal scholarship? The one you were shortlisted for?" Rachel frowned. "The STEM Innovation Grant, of course. I lost it unexpectedly. They said my application was incomplete." Kyle's hands tightened into fists. "It wasn't. I made sure it was." Silence. Rachel stared at him. "What are you saying?" He took a breath, like preparing for impact. "I hacked into your school email. I deleted the confirmation request for the final essay submission. I knew you wouldn't see the follow-up before the deadline." She didn't speak. Couldn't. Kyle continued quickly. "I didn't do it because I hated you. I was just desperate. I'd applied to the same grant under a different program, and I overheard someone saying you were a front-runner. I panicked. I was so tired of being second to you. Even if no one else saw it, I did. You were always so capable." Rachel sat down, slowly. Her stomach turned, not from betrayal, but from the clarity of it all. All the dots that never connected, the missing email, the faculty advisor who said, "We're sorry. We assumed you'd withdrawn." The scholarship that could have covered an entire year of tuition gone because her little brother had made a silent, selfish choice. Kyle buried his face in his hands. "I've carried it for years. I wanted to tell you 100 times, but I couldn't face what it meant." Rachel looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the 33-year-old man in front of her, but the scared, insecure boy he'd once been, the one who lived in the glow of praise and still believed it wasn't enough. "I don't even remember what I spent that money on," he said quietly. "Probably a trip, some laptop I didn't need." Rachel said nothing for a long time. Her fingers traced the edge of her jeans, her thoughts tangled in memories. Finally she asked, "Why now?" Kyle looked up, eyes rimmed red. "Because this time, I saw you. Not the myth or the person Mom made you out to be, the strong one. I saw you, and I realized I never really gave you a chance to be human." Rachel leaned back, exhaling sharply. "You do realize that scholarship changed everything for me. I had to work 3 jobs that year. I nearly dropped out." "I know," he whispered, "and I'll never forgive myself for that." She studied him, the shame etched into his posture, the sincerity in his voice. And then she said something that surprised even herself. "You don't have to carry this forever." Kyle blinked. "What?" "You're not the sum of your worst mistake," she said. "But you are responsible for what you do next." He looked stunned. "You're forgiving me?" Rachel nodded. "I am, not because it didn't hurt, but because neither of us can build a new story if we keep living in the old one. Kyle wiped his eyes, swallowing hard. I don't deserve that. No, Rachel agreed, but you're still my brother, and I'd rather have an honest version of you than a perfect lie. He let out a short, choked laugh. I'd like that too. For the first time in years, they sat side by side on her childhood bed, not as strangers, not as competitors, but as two flawed people finally speaking the truth. And in that quiet, the foundation of something new began to form. The tarmac shimmered under the afternoon sun as Rachel's private jet sat waiting, engines humming softly, crew at attention. Her mother adjusted her sunglasses for the third time, clutching her new carry-on bag as though it might fly away. Her father stood beside her, hands on hips, visibly impressed by the aircraft's sleek design. Kyle, naturally, was taking photos for his Instagram story, already composing the perfect caption. Rachel watched them all from the base of the stairs, a quiet smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since the truth exploded over a quiet dinner table. Since Jessica's voice had broken the surface of years of silence. Since her family had finally seen her, not just the dutiful daughter or the dependable big sister, but the woman who'd built something from nothing. Now they were boarding her jet. They had flown commercial before, vacations when they were kids, school trips, conferences. But this was different. This wasn't a favour Rachel owed them. It wasn't an apology or a power play. It was a gesture, a new chapter, an invitation to step into her world, not to compete or compare, but to share it. She helped her mother up the steps, who kept muttering, "I still can't believe this is real," like she was waiting for someone to snatch the moment away. "It's real," Rachel said gently. Inside, Jessica greeted them with her usual calm efficiency, offering drinks and confirming the itinerary. 1 week in Tuscany, at a quiet villa surrounded by olive trees and vineyards. 1 week in Paris exploring art, food and culture, with an optional tour of Novatech's upcoming European hub. Kyle plopped into his seat and turned to Rachel. "I meant to ask, is your marketing team still looking for interns?" She blinked. "You're interested?" He gave a sheepish smile. "Actually, yeah. I've been doing some thinking since our talk. I want to learn how this world really works. Not just the flashy pitch decks and launch parties, but the real grind." Rachel nodded slowly, surprised and impressed. "All right, you'll start remote while we're in Europe. Then you'll report to Janine in Boston when we're back." Kyle's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, not you?" She smirked. "You'll earn your place like everyone else." He grinned. "Fair." Her father, who had been admiring the digital flight controls in the cockpit, returned to his seat and cleared his throat. "I spoke with a couple of your engineers during the office tour," he said. "They mentioned a mentorship initiative." Rachel tilted her head. "You want to be involved?" "I'd like to. I spent 30 years in mechanical engineering. Wouldn't mind helping the next generation not repeat my mistakes." Rachel's smile softened. "We'd be lucky to have you, Dad." Linda sipped her sparkling water, still wide-eyed at the leather seats and touchscreens. "And I signed up for that reading pilot program your company's launching. They said they need retired educators to test the new interface." Rachel laughed. "You're joining the beta team?" "I figured it's time I learned what AI really means," her mother said. "Besides, I want to understand the world you've built." That one sentence hit deeper than Rachel expected. Her throat tightened slightly. "Thank you," she said softly. The jet lifted off smoothly, and soon the land below became patchwork. Rachel leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. This trip wasn't just about luxury or proving a point. It was about proximity, intimacy, letting her family witness her life in motion. In Tuscany, they shared long dinners under grapevine trellises, laughing over old memories and new stories. Her father toured the local wineries like an engineer at heart, fascinated by machinery. Kyle asked thoughtful questions during video meetings, scribbling notes. Her mother walked the hills at sunrise, journal in hand, sometimes joining Rachel in quiet reflection. In Paris, Rachel took them to the Education Summit, where she delivered a keynote. They sat front row, listening as she spoke about access, innovation, and the responsibility of building systems that saw every child. Afterward, her mother squeezed her hand and whispered, "I had no idea how brilliant you are." And for once, Rachel believed it wasn't just awe, it was recognition. 2 months later, Rachel stood in front of a building that hadn't existed 3 months before. It wasn't massive, 2 floors, glass panels, minimalist design, with native trees planted all around to blend it into the landscape. But it gleamed under the midday sun like something new, something hopeful. The sign over the entrance hadn't been installed until that morning. Linda Hall. Beneath it, smaller letters read, Novatech Regional Learning Innovation Centre. Her mother hadn't arrived yet. Neither had the rest of the town council, or the school district reps, or the small group of local press who would cover the ribbon cutting. Jessica was inside double-checking logistics, and Kyle was in the tech lab, nervously running through a practice demo for the youth mentorship program he was now co-managing. Rachel waited at the curb, hands clasped, nerves buzzing, not because she was uncertain about the centre, but because of what it meant. This was the final twist, not revenge. Not a public display of power. It was a gesture, an act of grace. It was saying, I see you now, and I'm choosing to love you anyway. A car pulled up. Her mother stepped out slowly, looking confused at first by the crowd gathering. Then she looked up, her eyes locked on the name. She didn't move. For a moment, Rachel wondered if she'd made a mistake, if this would be too much, too soon, if the gift would feel like guilt wrapped in granite. But then her mother gasped, hands flying to her mouth, eyes filling with tears. Rachel walked toward her. "Linda Hall," her mother whispered, barely able to speak. Rachel smiled. "We needed a name for the community wing, a space that would always belong to the people of this town. And I thought, why not name it after the woman who spent 3 decades helping kids learn how to read, how to believe in themselves, and who made sure I knew how to spell before I even started kindergarten?" Linda shook her head, eyes overflowing. "Eyes, I don't deserve this." "You do," Rachel said firmly, "because loving someone doesn't mean they're perfect. It means you remember the best in them, even when they forgot the best in you." Her mother broke. She pulled Rachel into a tight, shaking hug. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against Rachel's shoulder, "for all the times I didn't see you, for asking less because I thought you needed less, for making you invisible." Rachel held her tighter. "You were never invisible to me, even when it hurt." Linda leaned back, wiping her face. "Thank you for loving me even when I didn't deserve it." Rachel smiled. "We all get that chance. To be seen again." The ribbon cutting went smoothly. Rachel gave a brief speech. Kyle introduced the new tech apprentices. Her father, now officially mentoring part-time, stood beside 2 young interns, as if they were his own sons. Her mother gave a short tour to school board members through the library wing, beaming despite her still puffy eyes. And a week later they gathered again. Same town, same people, same restaurant. But everything felt different. Rachel arrived at Romano's wearing a deep navy dress, simple and elegant. The same waiter from last year greeted her at the entrance with a wink. "This time we held your reservation." The private room had been transformed. Fairy lights glimmered overhead. A large Happy 41st banner stretched across the back wall, but it was the words beneath it that made her pause. "This time we see you." She blinked hard. Kyle walked over. It was Mum's idea. Linda appeared at his side. I figured, if we're going to rewrite this story, might as well do it with lights and lemon cake. The table was filled with laughter that night, real laughter. The kind that comes from people who have broken, rebuilt, and chosen to stay. Halfway through dessert, her father stood up, raising his glass. We missed a lot, he began, but tonight we celebrate what we found. A daughter who never stopped building, even when no one saw her, a sister who forgave what others would have burned down, a woman who chose love, not for validation, but for healing. He looked at her, eyes shimmering, to Rachel, for never disappearing, even when we didn't know how to look. Glasses clinked, tears welled. Rachel sat there, surrounded by the very people who once overlooked her, now leaning in, listening. And in that moment, she knew this was what it meant to be truly seen.